Good Tuesday evening, high school sports fans. Joe Gilloway with Linglestown Gazette Sports live from the Orchard Street studio. And this is our High School Hoops weekly recap show, episode number 1. I'll be joined momentarily by our panel of experts, along with our special opening guest, as soon as we're done thanking those responsible for bringing you tonight's show, our Linglestown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors. And they are Rickabaz Electric, Payor Apparel, American Legion Post 272, Sam Hartley Decking, Modern Imprint, Hoffman Ford, Ted's Bar and Grill, The Tire Mart, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Tonino's Pizza, Team PA, AAU Basketball, Underdog Sports Bar and Grill, and Crystal Bob at Howard Hanna Real Estate. Thanks to those great local businesses for their continued support of Linglestown Gazette Sports and our area student athletes. Upcoming on Gazette Sports Chat tomorrow, Wednesday the 4th, we have 2 for the price of 1 tomorrow. We're actually doing podcasts at 7 and 8 o'clock. Busy week. 7 o'clock, we have one of Pennsylvania's elite track and field sprinters who just made his college choice public over the weekend. We're not going to spoil it. It's already out there for you. But Central Dolphins' Gabriel Scott, we're going to bring him in, talk about what it takes to be an elite sprinter, why he chose the school that he's committed to, and we're just excited about it. All indications are this is an awesome young man, and we love great athletes, but we love awesome young men and women too. So that will be Gabriel Scott from Central Dolphin tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, we're going to have a little bit of fun here, even more than we typically do, I guess. We have PA High School Football Championship Trivia. We have Brad and Gary. They're both from Western Pennsylvania, squaring off for some super difficult and super fun questions regarding the history of championship football in our great Commonwealth. So, again, 2 for the price of 1, 7 and 8 o'clock tomorrow night. And then Sunday, this coming Sunday, December 8th at 6 o'clock, back to the regular day and time, one last time until next season. It's our high school football recap show. The state championship games episode, we're gonna recap the 16 weeks leading up to the state championship weekend and talk about those 6 games, of course, from 1A up to 6A or 6A down, however we set it up. And we will have a guest panelist, one of our most fun panelists to have. Coach Ford Chapman will be joining us. He is a 3-time Pennsylvania State football champion, once as a starting quarterback at Cumberland Valley, once as an assistant coach at Central Dolphin, and once as a head coach at Bishop McDevitt. We're also working on a girls basketball recap show. I don't have quite the panel of experts I need at this point, but if you know girls high school basketball in the area, you do not need anything. You don't need a degree. You don't need to have played. You don't need to have coached. As long as you follow it enough that you can help us do what we're doing here tonight, that'll do it. So, all right. So let's bring in first of all John Velios, Ty Savercool. Thanks, guys. They're going to be 2 of our panel of experts. We call you panel of experts because you are. Okay, I started saying that just kind of affectionately, using that term, and I thought after a few weeks doing the football, I'm like, these guys really are experts. So we appreciate you guys helping us throughout the season, and we also have Coach Kirk Smallwood, legendary retired Harrisburg basketball coach Kirk Smallwood, with us throughout the season. He cannot make it tonight, but he said he will be joining us regularly. So tonight's opening guest is entering his 7th season as head coach at Central Dolphin High School, where he's enjoyed an overall record of 97 and 46, along with 5 seasons with winning records in 6 years. His 2024-2025 team enters the season with hopes of taking things a step further and vying for a Mid-Penn Commonwealth Division title and a deep run in the District 3 6A tournament. It's our pleasure to welcome to tonight's show Central Dolphin head coach Wayne Fletcher. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Did I get it right? Entering your 7th season?
This is my 7th season.
I think it was like last year, maybe. I was off by like 2 years. I was interviewing you, or maybe just talking to you. I'm like, man, you're probably 4 years in now. You're like, no, it's actually 6.
Yeah.
So you having fun yet?
Yeah. It's basketball, man. It's supposed to be fun.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know it's a grind. So I'm going to get started, ask you a couple questions, and then we're going to bring in John and Ty, Coach Savercool here. 7th season. Talk about just leading this boys basketball program and teaching in the school. Talk about the Central Dauphin experience, basketball wise and otherwise.
Man, it's a lot sometimes. Just because you have to wear a number of hats. I went into the experience thinking that I'm always going to be the coach, right? So I'm coaching in the classroom, I'm coaching in the gym. But then sometimes I'm teaching in the gym as well as teaching in the classroom. And wearing both hats, you know, always mindful of both of those roles. But it's always fun when students call me coach, because that's what I feel I am in both places.
Right. Is it a little extra pressure that there's so many successful sports programs in there? You ever walking around with like a 500 record and all the other coaches around you are like winning titles and stuff?
You listen, it's Central Dauphin, the ladies rule, man.
That's you better believe it.
Us boys teams, we're just trying to keep up, and it's totally cool. Obviously, having a daughter that plays sports, it's really nice to see the female sports do as well as they do, season in and season out. And as a boys program, we're trying to keep up. We're trying to keep our pace with them, knowing though that when they want to, they will. They'll really get it done.
Right. Okay. I'm going to ask you one more, and then I'll turn it over to the guys here. I know both your kids. You have awesome kids, young man, and young woman. Now, I guess we should call them. But Wayne the second, your son, who's a returning All-State player,
Yep.
committed to Navy. Okay. And then Kayla, within the same week, maybe a couple of days later, right?
Yeah, it's 2 days.
The older kid commit first. That's the way he worked it. She committed to Duke as a softball player. And I mean, I've watched them both play since they started at Central Dauphin. Phenomenal athletes, great kids. Your wife Trisha was a very good multi-sport, I think 3-sport athlete, right?
Yep.
Are you the you were in your own right, you were a very good basketball player, but are you the 4th best athlete in your own home?
All right, so here's the deal. We're talking athlete. No.
He's taking this question seriously.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to accept it.
Okay, I'm not saying that
you set him up, Joe.
Right. If we're going athlete, no, I'm not the 4th best. But if we're saying the most accomplished,
okay,
yeah, I guess so.
All right, fair enough. You didn't know it was going to be all this, did you?
I mean, listen. I got to live with these people, so I'm not going to just,
let's just call it this: a very athletic household.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah,
okay, guys. John, Coach Sabercool, what do you got?
You're welcome, Coach. It's great to have you on Joe's program here at Lingostown Gazette Sports. I've followed you since you started coaching Central Dauphin, and I've followed the Central Dauphin boys basketball program before you were coaching, and to tell you that you turned the program around is an understatement, because you have. In all honesty, you've enjoyed a lot of success over the last few years, and I'm not saying it's 100% just you. You had a lot of good players, but you've done a lot to contribute to turning the program around. So it's not just the girls program that's getting attention. I mean, you've won a lot of games against a lot of good competition, and hats off to you for doing that, because I've seen the program before you took over, and it's like a 180. So I just wanted to say that to you. Do you have any goals set for this year and this year's team?
Joe asked me if I was having fun. And doing this job, it is a grind. And the theme, though, for this season, whether it's the coaches and the players, is to have fun. Like that, the goal is to enjoy this process. It is daunting for sure. When we hit January, it's going to be crazy, but it is a game. And I don't know that in my time as a high school coach, I've enjoyed it as much as I could have or should have. And so my goal this year is to try to enjoy as much of it as I can.
That's good. Thanks.
Sabercool?
Yeah, I think mine. I may know the answer as a coach to this, but I just like to hear your perspective on it as well. So, you started your career at a small school in Campbell, and then segued at the Central Dauphin as a large school, and and I started at a small school up in Berks County at Tulpehock and segued to a larger school at Cedar Cliff. How have you changed how you coach, how you approach building a culture in a small school environment versus large school?
Man, I mean, it's like night and day. Like there are so many more things that you have to manage when you go from coaching at a small school to a big school. And I don't know that a lot of people can appreciate that or understand it. But it is a completely different animal. And then when you throw in the fact that, Central Dauphin plays in the Commonwealth and the travel that's involved, like those are variables that can dictate basketball games. It's not X's and O's. It's are these guys eating at the right time, or the bus here on time? And then, getting back from an away game late, coming home from Altoona, all of that stuff plays a part, and that makes it very difficult. In regards to culture building, I think I don't know. I think from that perspective, it's very similar. I've been fortunate enough to have, some of my former players at Camp Hill. They've been following along, and they've been coming to a few games, and they tell me that they see some of the same things that I was trying to establish when I was at Camp Hill. So I guess, being a defensive-minded guy, trying to make sure that we're disciplined as much as possible, not letting a lot of shenanigans go by, and that's not on the court but off the court. Trying to build leaders with these young men, like those things stay constant. But the program building itself it's not the same at all. It is very different. Very different.
I found it a little bit harder at times at a smaller school because you have more multi-sport kids there because they're small. They're you don't see them year round a lot of times like you do at a large school, and it's always great to have multi-sport kids, but it's also easier when you're trying to preach your message and build your culture, and you see the kids 6, 7, 8 months out of the year versus 3 or 4. And out of smaller school, you have to kind of pick those moments where you want to really get your message across. So yeah, I agree.
And to that point, the cool thing is you're competing against other schools that have the same problem. So like this year we're scrimmaging and people are like, hey, like how many football players are you waiting for? And I'm like, for the first time ever, none. Right. Wow. And so we've had our guys all fall. And there's a level of comfort that I have going into game one. Having besides the fact that it's the first game, but the fact that I have a little bit of an understanding of what everybody brings to the table because we've been doing this for a few months now. And at a small school, that thing, man. And at Camp Hill, like football, like the football team was always good. So, we're waiting on, a large contingent of our team. But the benefit is they bring a championship attitude. Like when they were doing well and they were playing deep into the playoffs, I could count on some of those guys bringing that type of mentality to the basketball team.
That's a successful little sports school over there. And it is a little school. That's why I called it a little school. But they really hold their own. They do a good job over there. I had a young man by the name of Noah Doy. I don't know if you guys ever – what a great kid he is. He's a young man. I got to start calling these kids young men when they're, juniors or seniors in high school. But, he lived what you guys are talking about here. He plays 3 sports, and he plays football, and then he wrestles, and he plays baseball. And he's like kind of highly committed to all 3. You know what I mean? And he talked about having, coaches having to share him basically. What are you doing with Noah? When's he going to be free? I'm sure that conversation exists sometimes. And then him trying to he loves all 3 of his coaches. But so that's just an example of what you guys are talking about that makes things different at the smaller schools. Coach Fletcher,
can I elaborate on that real quick?
Absolutely, certainly.
And the cool thing about the small school part is all of the coaches understand that to be true. And so in order for all of our teams to be successful and those kids to be successful, we have to share and we have to have conversations. When you get into a bigger school, sometimes it's like, I want to keep my kid but my kid is not mine because they want to play multiple sports. And sometimes I found that to be more challenging at Central Dauphin than it was at Camp Hill.
Right. You're from Upper Manhattan originally. I like this story because I asked you this when I first met you. I think we determined it was about 7 years ago. I
Nobody
interviewed
calls
you.
it Upper Manhattan.
Upper Manhattan, Harlem. I was gonna clarify for those at home.
Yeah.
I think it's technically Upper Manhattan.
I mean,
but
technically it is, but
but
like you go to Manhattan.
I
and
wasn't-
Manhattan to them is
I
like-
wasn't going to leave out that you're from Harlem, specifically from Harlem.
Yeah.
Talk about, because I like this. I like hip hop and rap. Talk about some of the guys you went to school with.
Oh man, well,
Entertainers and I don't know, drug kingpins. Who was up there when you were there?
I'm gonna tell you some of that. Listen, so the older I get, the less likely it is these young people even know who these folks are, right?
Okay, I do though.
Boy, you do, yeah. And like Mace and Cam specifically. So Mace was, well, both of them were famous rappers. They, sold millions of records and all that stuff. And they've made a resurgence, right? Because they have a podcast called It Is What It Is. And so people like my age or a little bit younger, they enjoy seeing them again. And it's funny because I don't know, like I don't talk a lot about it, and some people who know me know that connection. But it's funny how many times I've gotten phone calls from people like, you really did grow up in Harlem. You really did know them because they're on the podcast talking about me. And I'm like,
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't make that up.
Right. No, you wouldn't. So anyway, for those at home, Cameron, it was with the Diplomats, I believe they called it.
Yeah.
And Mace was with
Mace.
Bad Boy. Bad Boy. He was one of Puffy, P. Diddy's main guys when he first started Bad Boy. So yeah, they're kind of, and didn't one of them, or did they both play basketball with you?
They both did. We all play high school ball together. Yep.
Don't tell me they were better than you. Could they?
Nah. So no.
Okay.
I will tell you, Cam was very much a Division I talent.
Was he really? Wow.
Yeah, but
Wow.
he the streets were always calling him, and he couldn't
Right.
get away. So
He's a pretty good street guy. He's kind of kept himself out of trouble for the most part. And so anyway, this is a segue over to how'd you end up at Clarion?
because Clarion
University. Is it college back then? But anyway,
No, still
was it Clarion
I'm not
University?
that old,
Okay, all right.
yo. It honestly, without getting too long-winded, there were some parts of my recruitment that I totally messed up. Like I was the dude that felt that I was better than I was, and so I didn't take some of the phone calls as seriously as I should, which is why I'm very serious about it with my players.
Mm-hmm.
But when push came to shove, Clarion was like the antithesis of Harlem. It was safe. It was a place that I didn't feel threatened. And I knew that I could get my education and play basketball. And so that's kind of how I found it. And as weird as it seems, it was the greatest experience I had during that time in my life. So
now you finished off at Kutztown. You did one last season at Kutztown. How'd you like Kutztown?
Because that was cool. It was different. I was a graduate. I did a grad transfer year. I was like one of the first people to do that, I guess. I was at a different point in my life, I guess. At that point, I was realizing that basketball was about to come to an end. Everybody has dreams of playing professionally overseas or here. But at that point, it was finishing up and trying to maximize being able to play one more year while I was getting my master's degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point there, Coach. I mean, you see now more and more about the grad transfer years now, like recently, like when you're talking about it, I never heard of it, back in those days. So, to be able to be one of the first guys to do that is sort of important. But you brought up a good point too. Like, I mean, most of your players are not going to end up, playing overseas, even, and definitely not in the NBA. So how do you prepare them for, life in college, like, to try to get the most out of college and their playing career in college and then transfer that into, just life?
That part in this day and time is challenging because like nobody wants to hear that
everyone's level chasing.
Yeah. And over the years, I've always wanted to be a straight shooter. Like, I'm gonna tell you what I know about what your recruitment looks like from my perspective, right? The market dictates what your level is. And so, like, 50 people could tell you, hey, you're a Division I player, but if Division III schools are calling, you're a Division III player. Like, that's just what it is. And nobody wants to hear that. And so, from the perspective of trying to prepare people, I'm trying to help them maximize themselves as best as possible. But I also know that if they or their parents don't want to hear it, they're not going to listen.
Right.
And it's very hard. And it's disappointing because I don't claim to know everything, but our track record as a coaching staff has been pretty spot on. And people still are like, nah, I don't believe you. I don't want to hear what you have to say. And
well, between your experience with your own life and your own college career, and now doing this professionally, coaching professionally, basically, you would be the person that would know. Okay. So anyway, Coach Savercool, you got one more we could take?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll bring it back to the court with the question a little bit. So as a coach, I mean, I know you talked about, and we all know the season is a grind. Like, basketball is hard. We have major holidays built into our seasons, and it's long, and it's 3-game weeks. And when I talked to Coach Gillen, our football coach at Cedar Cliff, and I always said how he had 6 days to prepare for one game, and there's times where we don't have a single day to prepare for our next opponent because it's back to back. But that said, how do you as a coach manage your team's expectations over the long haul of the season? Because you're going to have good games. You're going to have bad games. Like, I got a phone call 2 days ago that Central Dauphin kicked the crap out of Roman Catholic. So how do you manage those expectations of, like, keeping your kids dialed in on keeping their best game in front of them? Because that is hard.
You know what? So we start our season tomorrow. We play 4 games in 5 days.
Wilkes-Barre tomorrow. Sorry to interrupt. Just for those at home.
Yep. We got Muhlenberg on Friday.
Wow.
We have the winner of Manhattan Township Columbia Saturday, and then we travel to Philly to play Archbishop Ryan at Archbishop Ryan.
Ooh, that's a grind.
3 days in a row.
That's a grind.
Yeah, that is it's crazy. And so already I'm like, okay, what do we do? Now, I'm going to give you a long-winded answer if you don't mind. Navy just played 3 games in 3 days. And when I looked at their schedule, fortunately, I can reach out and say, hey, coach, what are you guys doing to make sure that you can try to maximize? And I'm not going to share with you the details, but they gave me a lot of insight as to how we try to maximize making sure that they are able to play physically, right? Make nutrition, hydration, stretching, all of that stuff. And so we're over the top doing this before we even start the season, because we're starting the season just like that. We're starting the season as though we're playing in January, because that's what January looks like. And then it's a matter of what we've talked about a lot over the past few days is making sure that we're taking care of each other and picking each other up when we can. And so because they're high school dudes and they're going to have good days, bad days, it might not even be basketball related. But if somebody needs to be picked up, we got to try our best to pick them up. And so that's our mantra. That's our mindset. While having fun, like not having so much pressure from outside entities and all of the things that don't really matter. What matters is us trying to go out and be as competitive as possible, have some fun doing it, and then the chips will fall where they may. Anybody who has aspirations to play beyond high school, that will take care of itself. Anybody who this is it for them, that will take care of itself, because we are preparing young men, and they will get something very positive out of this experience if they allow it to happen.
Yeah, and when you're good, Coach. I mean, and you guys are good, there's a lot of noise, and it's really hard as a coach to block out that noise, whether it be the social media noise, the expectations noise, whatever they see. You don't want to believe your own hype, so to speak, and just remain confident, because you don't want to tear that down, because when you're playing well, you want to keep that rolling, and that's a hard balance, and that's a tough schedule to come out, because that could be a roller coaster. Start the season, but that'll build you for March.
The goal is we've said, and honestly, as much time as we've had with the group, we don't know for sure what we're going to be. And if we challenge ourselves early and often, we will know by mid-January who we are. And that's the time that we want to know who we are, because then we can be building. So hopefully our players believe what we've been telling them, and it's just about going out and competing. The record, the score, all of that stuff will take care of itself, but the goal is to be peaking when we need to peak. We don't need to be peaking right now, but we do want to be building as much confidence as possible, and we can do that. It's just a matter of if we will.
You want to be heading down the right path towards peaking, right?
Yeah.
Coach Wayne Fletcher, thank you so much, Coach.
Thanks for having
that was
me.
about as phenomenal of a 20-minute interview as we could have expected out of you. It was fun. It was informative, educational. You're a heck of a coach, a great leader of young men, and glad to know you and glad to have you on the show. One more question.
Yes.
Sometime between now and the end of the season, could you get a few of your guys together and let them come on as guests?
Oh, for sure. I would love it.
Okay. All right. We'll have a lot of fun. We'll bring them on either this show as an opening guest or give them their own show. We'll work them in somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Coach
thank
Fletcher,
you,
best wishes tomorrow night against Wilkes-Barre and then in the next few days and beyond. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Good luck this season, Coach.
Tell everybody I said hello.
I will. Thank you.
Take care. Yep. Bye-bye. Well, that was pretty awesome. That's why we do this right there. That was a good time, you know. Kind of Coach Fletcher, he's kind of he comes across sometimes as pretty stiff and he's a serious dude, you know what I mean? But if you know him a little bit, he likes to let loose too and have a little bit of fun. And that's the side we were able to see of him tonight. So before we get into this, I did want to mention too, I think most people that would be on this show watching know who Ty Savercool is, but you mentioned you had 2 seasons at Tulpehocken before 7 seasons at Cedar Cliff, 118 wins in your career, including the most successful 3-year stint in Cedar Cliff High School boys basketball history. So, which included a 2021-2022 league title in a very tough Keystone division. You know, I will say this, during the time that you were there, and maybe still, but I think it was even tougher when you were there. That Keystone division was brutal, wasn't it, Coach?
Yeah, really good coaches. Really good coaches.
Really good coaches.
I started, before I became a head coach, I was in the Commonwealth as an assistant at Central Dauphin, and it's really interesting when you contrast the Commonwealth and Keystone, because the Commonwealth, those teams kind of have their identities and they do what they do and they kind of have the same flow every night. Right. And the Keystone, we always talked about, you never knew what you were going to get from an X's and O's perspective, because the coaches would just throw you something that you didn't expect. They had kind of their identities, but they still would do something different every night. So it was a really challenging division, you know, coaching wise.
Yeah, when you have, well, we don't have to name them all, but I mean, just the first one that comes to mind is Paul Blackburn. And then you got Rick Ativo and, you know, and Tim Bean, he's a heck of a coach, man. He just doesn't really have players right now, but you give Tim Bean a couple of players, he's going to bring it too. You know, that top to bottom, that's just a really tough, I really respected your time there at Cedar Cliff. I thought you did one heck of a job. You won some really big games against some 6A teams, you know, in some you know, crucial times. You did beat Cumberland Valley the one year. And anyway, so pleasure to have you as a panelist. John Velios, your career record 0-0. But
I got a couple of Biddy wins.
A Biddy ball. Okay, yeah. that counts. But no, John's a friend of mine, but he's not here because he's a friend of mine. He's a good basketball guy, and I know that you're going to contribute to this show in a big way over the months, upcoming months. So before we get into talking about, we don't really have enough knowledge to really get too in depth, I guess would be the word. And I want to thank the guys at Penn Live. I'm not just totally hijacking all of their information, but they're friends of mine and they do a great job. And I did some reading up and took some notes. And some of this stuff included what I read on Penn Live. But the first thing that I didn't know about until I think you and I either talked or were texting last night, Coach, Middletown and East Pennsboro have been moved from the Capital Division to the Colonial Division in exchange for Big Spring and James Buchanan back over to the Capital. Now, why does a move like that happen? I know sometimes it's a little more clear. Is it geographic? Is it enrollment? Why do they do that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think it used to be there used to be more of a geographic flavor, and now my guess is with the power ranking system the way it is, and how the level and size of team that you play is really important. They're probably looking a little bit more based on the size of the school over geography, so to speak. So they're moving Middletown, East Pennsboro, who I believe are both 5A schools now, moving them into the Colonial, which has more 5As in it than the Capital, which is the smallest schools in the Mid-Penn Conference. So, because it is, if you're a 5A school playing a 3A Camp Hill, or I believe Camp Hill's 3A, that hurts you if you lose to them, hurts you a lot if you lose to them, and it truly doesn't help you much if you beat them, because you get less points for that win. And conversely, it's like a double-edged sword. When you lose to them, you actually get more of a loss. When you lose to a 3A school versus a 5A school, that loss hurts more on your power rankings. How the formula is set up. So I think they're just trying to go size of school.
The thing that kind of stinks, I guess, I don't think they really consider like rivalries and stuff like that. I mean, maybe they do, but Middletown was in a division with Bishop McDevitt, who's basically they share athletes, Susquehanna Township, Steel High, all those surrounding communities. And they just created that Capital Division for basketball at the beginning of the 2020-2021 season. And I remember, John and I, we've been friends for years, and we were like, wow, this is going to be really something. They put together a great basketball league, and there goes one of the top teams in that basketball league now, Middletown, out of there. So
yeah, for years, Joe. I mean, like I think Coach just had a great explanation on the power rankings.
No doubt, yeah.
Because most people don't realize that, and like he said, it was more geographical, and that makes a lot of sense too. Like Big Spring and Boiling Spring, having them back together now is better. But they were separated for a couple years there. Yeah. But before that, they were together in the Colonial. So we've had a lot of changes over the last few years, and with Coach's explanation there concerning the power ranks, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Historically, Coach, when Coach Savercool was at Cedar Cliff, one of his biggest rivals was McDevitt, and that they were a 5A school. McDevitt was a 4A school, and now they're 6A. Yeah. So, I mean, that wouldn't help him being in the same division with them anymore. So I think that was one of the reasons why McDevitt moved out of the Keystone, because they were mostly in with 5A schools, and they moved down to the Capital to a smaller school. But they're the rivalries were still there, like you said, Joe. Trinity and Middletown, and
just when we were getting comfortable with that kind of that alignment and those rivalries and stuff like that. At least guys like us, we look forward to those teams playing. Even if it was Susquehanna Township and Steel High, like let's call it an off year or down year, it was still a great rivalry to see them play twice in a season, and they still will. I'm just using them as an example. So, so that's what's going on there, and I'm glad that you brought that up with me, Coach, last night. Let's just jump into the Commonwealth Division here, and we're not going to go – there's 32 teams in this Mid-Penn Conference. We're not going to talk about every one of them. We're going to talk about kind of the local ones a little more, because I think most of our viewers are more kind of local, Harrisburg area. So let's start with Cumberland Valley. Dave Vespignani, coming off a 23-4 record. They are the reigning Commonwealth Division and District 3 champions. They return Nolan Bazalka, Creston Austin, J.J. Lebo, and Aiden Deal. Man, they return a lot of really good players. They're going to add sophomore guard Jared It's D'Olimpio, and he's ready for a breakout year. He's ready to kind of be as good as the rest of those guys. Coach, what Dave Vespignani, he's really got something working over there, doesn't he?
Yeah. So when he moved to the area, he actually coached with me at Cedar Cliff for two years, maybe. And I knew we were just lucky to have him because it was a matter of time for him to become a head varsity coach. He was a head varsity coach in other states before he came back to Pennsylvania. And I knew it was a matter of time. And when Cumberland Valley got him, he has built them into a program.
Wow.
Just every year they can compete no matter who's on the floor. He's an excellent motivator. He knows how to game plan. And like I said, I think Cumberland Valley's biggest issue prior to his arrival, a lot of times was, when we talked about it with Coach Fletcher, is not peaking too early. I think Cumberland Valley, they used to peak in January prior to Coach Vespi's arrival. And when he's gotten there, he has continued to keep them rolling in February and sometimes into March, unless they run into Cedar Cliff. But honestly, that's what Vespi's done. He's got them playing good basketball when they are supposed to be playing good basketball. And that's, in my time whenever I was at Central Dauphin, that's what we always kind of said about CV is they peaked too early.
That was a big win you guys had over Cumberland Valley there. I think John, you and I were texting during that. I was like, are they going to be able to hold on? Or
we were live streaming it, Joe.
Oh, is that what we were? Yeah, okay.
we were in the sidelines live streaming it.
Wow, what a W! Yeah, what a W!
That Cedar Cliff came back on them. They were down, right, Coach?
No. We're talking about two different games here.
You're
talking about the Mid-Penn game, John.
Yeah,
which
that's
was a
what
great
I'm talking
win.
about.
Ty had 3 of his guys out.
Yeah,
that game. He had 3 starters out.
You already counted it as an L, and they won.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But I was talking about the district game over there.
All right.
I think it was at the Dome, right? Was that
the district game? Yeah, that was
something else. You guys got up double digits early and just you never took your foot off the throttle. So anyway, best wishes to Coach David Vespignani. His guys, I mean, I really like Nolan Bazalka. Nolan Bazalka, he was like a kind of like a power forward-ish last year. I think he was like a 4. And he's bringing the ball up this year. He's the point guard.
They're going to be a tough customer in the Commonwealth again.
Yeah, they're gonna be tough. So Chambersburg, these aren't necessarily my predictions. I'm just kind of lining them up the way, admittedly, the way Penn Live had them lined up. Coach Sean Scheffler coming off a 20-7 record. They have J.J. Kelly, one of the top players in the state. He is an Ohio University commit. And the calling card of Coach Scheffler is defense, right, Coach Sabercool?
Yeah, defense and physicality. I mean, they're a grind, so that's why they're always in every game, because they give you that same level of effort and physicality every night. Even if they're not shooting well, they're in every game, and that's been Scheffler for since forever. I mean, he is one heck of a coach. That just has them again, another program that no matter who they put on the floor, they win.
Right. So let's move down to Central Dauphin. Now that Coach Fletcher's gone, we can say what we want about him and his team here. But anyway, he's in again. Coach Wade Fletcher, 18-9 last year. I think he finished 3rd or 4th. Them and Carlisle have kind of been sharing that 3rd and 4th place over the last couple years. He's got Wayne Fletcher II, his son, returning All-State player. And I was at the Bethlehem Catholic game 2 weeks ago. They looked really good. They looked athletic. They don't have trees. They don't have anybody real big, but they have a lot of guys in that 6'2" to 6'4" realm. Not big enough or too big to lose their athleticism, if that makes sense. They can all run the floor. I mean, it was kind of like a dunk fest. And I know dunking doesn't win championships. I get that.
Did they beat Roman Catholic too, Joe? You said?
I don't know what happened there. I don't know. So I wasn't there. It was a closed. Okay. I heard they played pretty well though, Central Dauphin. I think the big question there is, and I don't think we're here to answer it, if they have shooters. You still have to have shooters. That's one of the things that Chambersburg has had over the years. They've always had that shooter, sometimes 2 or 3 shooters, Chambersburg. Wayne Fletcher II is a good shooter. So you have to figure out how to score points. Sometimes, or very often, it's easier to score points from 22 feet away, right, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think CD's calling card this year is going to be how they impose their will defensively with their pressure. Like they're going to want to probably score 2/3 of their points a game off of their defense in transition. Like
right.
I think that's what Wayne, being that he doesn't have that solidified big, he's going to try and speed the game up and really pressure people into mistakes and keeping the game fast.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, I think they're going to have shooters, Joe. I was at the game last year where they almost beat Central York at home, and Central York ended up winning the state championship. So, I mean, they were good last year. They lost a few very close games to good teams, and it could have gone either way. They could have been challenging for the Commonwealth division title. If a couple of games would have gone there.
That's a great point, John. You're absolutely right, and I think that they lost. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I think they lost in the opening round of states to, was it Upper St. Clair? It was somebody really good.
Yeah, they got a bad draw.
And they got a bad draw, and they had to lead most of the game. And sometimes the cream rises, but that's a good point. And that's kind of games like that are what have kind of solidified my faith in Coach Fletcher as a good coach, because I've really seen him coach them up and stay with or beat sometimes some of the better teams out there. How about Carlisle? Jaden Smith is gone. Parker Smith remains. Andre Anderson's the coach, 18-7 last year. They lost a senior forward, Spencer Griffey, out for the season with a knee injury. So I anticipate, this might be the year for Central Dauphin to kind of push away from them and kind of try to join Cumberland Valley and Chambersburg at the top. We don't have to go into Carlisle. We don't have to go into all these necessarily, unless you have something, throw it in there. But Central Dauphin East, Ryan Hill, coach. I think it's his third year. Hill started in 22, 8-14 last year. He's entering his third season. And I think for them guys, and I think you guys follow basketball enough, just finishing in the top 4. There's 8 Commonwealth teams, okay? You have the top 4, which has been Cumberland Valley, Chambersburg, Central Dauphin, and Carlisle over the last handful of years. Just breaking into that top 4 would kind of be, let's call it a breakout season for Coach Hill and his guys. You got to start somewhere. They're not going to go from, 5th or 6th in the division to winning it probably. They might disagree, but they do have some athletes in that program. What do you guys see that when you watch Central Dauphin East? Is it just that Coach Hill's still a young coach, and he is? He's kind of young. He's kind of inexperienced at head coach level. You guys see anything that could happen there to bring them up a little bit?
I mean, it's the Commonwealth. Commonwealth is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to rebuild a program in that Commonwealth because you don't get an off night top to bottom in that division. So,
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Again, I think for East, they're a team that has to really establish their identity and what they're good at. And I think what they're good at is getting the game fast and using their athleticism, using their speed and pressuring people. And I think if they can be disciplined in that regard, I think the offense will come, to them a lot easier. And then with that will come confidence. And then there's your rebuild back. Climbing up the Commonwealth is just kind of finding what you're good at, sticking to your strength, and building off of that. That's where you get your baseline.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, Joe, they're another team that's had a lot of really good close games over the last few years.
Yep.
They just don't have that experience to get over the hump.
Yeah.
So, a couple years ago, they were very close to making the playoffs, and they just barely missed it. So. Like Coach Saberpool said, I mean, rebuilding, sometimes it takes time and,
Right. So then we have the bottom 3. Go ahead. Did I interrupt somebody?
No, you didn't mention State College. They've been
that's what I'm mentioning here. They kind of ebb and flow up there.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have the athletes, and then they get really, really good. Like when they had they had Keaton Ellis and the Freiberg brothers.
And then
Tommy,
the coach's son.
And then Shrewsbury. But it comes in waves. They're good for a few years, and then they don't have the players. That dries up, and then And I think that they're coming off a 13-13 year, and it doesn't look like they have a whole lot. So I anticipate State College, Harrisburg again. I mean, it pains me to say that. I don't know if Harrisburg's ready to improve. Damone Maxwell, he's entering his third season. He's 9-33 in his first 2 years. He's relying on football players, man. That's hard to do unless you're steel high in the 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. That's not the formula anymore, is it, Coach Savercool? Like to sit there and wait for all your.
I mean, at these large schools, like multi-sport athletes are awesome, but you can't have your entire starting five, be 3-sport athletes at a large school level.
Right.
That's the reality. It's very hard to be competitive with that. I mean, the formula truly is you got to have those 3 or 4 core basketball players that are good at that sport, and then you have the multi-sport kids that bring other elements of the game that are going to help, whether it be they're a physical rebounder, they're a good screen setter, they have good footwork, so they're a good defender. You build around them, and I even kind of look at the 2012 Central Dolphin team that I was an assistant coach for. I was on that staff. We had one of the best players in the state in Devin Thomas, and we have a really good point guard in Nick Seafeld, and some good guards in Ryan Beaver and Brian Laird. And they're our basketball core, so to speak. And then you had Zayd Esau, who's one of the best athletes in the state, coming out of football, and Brandon Lavia coming out of football. And you build all those pieces together, you've got a really good mix.
Right.
But at a large school level, you gotta have a couple core basketball guys to be successful.
So we wish all these programs, and then Altoona, they're just a boys basketball program trying to find some identity. I don't know what else to say. They're right now a very good girls program up there under Coach Chris Flegel. Right there, they go toe to toe, head to head with Central Dolphin every season. So, but that's for another show. So we wish all the teams well in the Commonwealth this year, and it should be interesting for sure. How about the Keystone fellas? It's going to probably be Mechanicsburg's to lose. And I probably overused that line or that statement, but they won a division and the district last year. That was Gaffey's inaugural season. And they still have, I think, the 3 main cogs back. Correct me if I'm wrong. Definitely Josh Smith. He was All-State last year. Chance Janoski and Justin Bardo. That's kind of their three big guys. Ty.
Yeah.
And they're all back, man. Coach Gaffey has got 3. He's got one thing he has achieved that I'm thinking very few, none that I can think of, coaches have achieved, is he's won district championships with 3 different teams, 3 different programs, schools. Palmyra in '96, I remember that one. That was just a crazy big upset. I think it was over Susquehanna Township, maybe like 44-40. And then 2 at McDevitt, of course. John's son was on the 2019 team. He's got a district gold medal. And then, of course, last year, and he beat Paul Blackburn at Hershey last year at, of course, at Giant Center. So that's the team that's got the target on their back, I think.
Yeah, for sure. They got to be the favorites, Joe. I mean, Coach Savercool knows those players well. And, does Cedar Cliff or Hershey have anything to say about that this year, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the class is Mechanicsburg. What's going to benefit them is, you go as you build, you go from hunter to hunted, so to speak. And, now they're, like you said, Joe, they have the target on their back now. Where they have value is they had that last year as well. So they have a second year now of being the team that is hunted. So they have to essentially every night is the other team's Super Bowl. So they have to be ready to take the other team's best punch. And when I was in 2022, when we were very good at Cedar Cliff, that was the message to our kids. It's like, unfortunately, it's not an off night because the other team's going to play their best game against us, and we get the other team's best punch. Mechanicsburg's challenge is going to be beyond when they hit districts because they're 6A now. That is significant.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That is significant because my second and third year we were 5A at Cedar Cliff. The other 5 years we were 6A. That is a huge jump. The type of school, the type of program that's in 5A, and I'm not discrediting a 5A district championship. It's phenomenal to win at any level. But to win a 6A district championship is just a gauntlet when you factor in all of District 3. You've got Reading High and Wilson and the 6A schools that are in the LL League that are always very good. York County, Central York. I mean, they're just cream of the crop down there in York County. So 6A is just a beast.
Yeah, John, you probably get tired of me. So I say the same thing all the time. Even gone from 5A to 6A, and that does not discount that there are plenty of really good 5A schools, or programs. But you're right, man. To try to, you called it a gauntlet. That's a gauntlet, to try to navigate your way through when there's only 12 schools that make it in 6A. Yeah. You're not getting any slouches,
Nope, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. So, best wishes to Coach Gaffey and his guys, Hershey and Paul Blackburn, coming off of a really good season last year. I mean, here's what stinks about what happened to Hershey. They were 21-4, division and District 3 runners up. They just the only people that eclipsed them were the Mechanicsburg guys. And I love Paul Blackburn. I think he's a great guy. I think he's an awesome coach. He coached for his wife, right, back in Cumberland Valley years ago. What a great story that is. And he knew he was very clear about who was in charge, And here's a guy that's got at least one state championship as a high school player. So he's been around basketball his whole life. I think that's a great story. The thing with Blackburn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, again, I'll use the term calling card. Isn't he a defensive-minded coach? If he can keep the score down, that's how he's going to win games. Is that right?
I mean, I think what he brings to the table as a coach, just as someone who was down the sideline from him for 7 years, is he's a stable presence for the kids. So he doesn't have high highs, he doesn't have low lows. So Hershey is able to compete year in and year out because what he brings is a stable presence and a stable message, and he makes really good adjustments in game that are challenging. Coaching down the sideline from him, and he gets the most out of his kids,
right.
By March. There might be a lot of frustrations in the community of Hershey in December, but I can tell you come late February, like Hershey's going to be playing their best ball, and that's coaching.
Right. Okay. So, again, best wishes to Coach Blackburn. We'll get him on this show. We're gonna get some interesting, we call them opening guests. You guys are welcome to get on the phone or however you contact your friends that are in the business, and but we'll definitely get Coach Blackburn on here. Lower Dolphin back to having some talent. I don't want to call them untalented the last few years, but Coach Riccativo, they're coming off of a 12-11 record, but he's proven he can win. He's got district titles in 5A in 2019 and 21, 2 times in 3 years. I think he's ready to make another run. It's going to be tough to bust into that top 2, but he's got 5 senior starters. Okay. I know that, and a deep bench. So, and he can coach. I think he can flat out coach. I think I've always, the conversations I've had is if I was an AD and I was coaching or I was looking for a coach, Riccativo is the kind of guy I'd want leading my guys. I'd want. What do you think of him as a coach, Ty?
I mean, he's truthfully the hardest coach to coach against in the case.
Is he really? Yeah.
It's again, I'm not discrediting everyone else, but right. He is absolutely phenomenal coach in terms of picking up in-game adjustments and doing these little things. The senior core that he has, they've been playing varsity basketball since they've been sophomores. Some of them even younger. So he's got a really experienced group that, if they can take care of the ball, and I think last year and even 2 years ago when they were sophomores, they were a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. You'd watch them one game, they make 15 threes, and you watch them the next game, they make 1. They'd go 15 for 20 and then 1 for 20. I mean, it was they were polar opposites each night. Again, that's sophomores. Now they're seniors, so that should stabilize. And with him on the sideline and that senior experience, they should be very good.
Yeah, and he's been a basketball guy his whole life. He's from Steelton. Him and his I know his younger brother Mike was a part of that 92. He was the power forward on that 92 state championship team. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Rick played with that those years with Charlie Fortney, that that kind of. He played with a lot of really, really good.
He brings
really
that old school Steelton mentality to.
He really does. He really
That's
does,
for
and
sure.
I think that accounts for something. I don't know what. I can't put my
Roller
thumb on
Clap
it.
even finds its way to Hummelstown.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So again, I think there's kind of a clear line in the sand drawn between those three. It's not that I don't want to talk about the rest. Milton Hershey has a second-year coach, Scott Rooney. It's kind of Mark Zerby stepped away 2 years ago to kind of focus more on his love Zerby. He's a guy that's not a coach or a player that I would have on our show here just to talk a little bit. But love Mark Zerby. He knew it was time to step aside and just be the AD. And this is kind of Rooney's team now. You know, he inherited players from Zerby 2 years ago or last year. I'm sorry. So, but they were 3-19 last year. They're going to try to flip the switch and improve a little bit. Then we got Redland, Mifflin County. Cedar Cliff is without Sam Grube for the first time in 5 years, right? So, I don't mind if you spend a minute on Sam Grube. He was I know you liked Sam, and he was a heck of a player, heck of a multi-sport athlete, man. That school's going to miss him as an athlete, aren't they?
Yeah, special kid, special family. He cares. He's a rare breed in today's day and age as a player. And if there's any youngsters that are aspiring to be or have the mentality for your community, like Sam is the guy to idolize because he loves Cedar Cliff more than anything, no matter if he's wearing a baseball jersey or a basketball jersey, whatever jersey it is. He just has so much pride in the program that he's playing for. So he was a joy to coach. And I was so glad that he got to finish his senior year strong on both levels for both of his sports. And now he's on a scholarship at Mount St. Mary's for baseball.
That's awesome, man. And you know, how do kids that age have that much maturity and that much presence of mind to know how important it is to be role models and examples in the community? I don't know where they get that from, but yeah, I only wanted to bring him up because I knew that you used to speak very highly of Sam Grube, and we wish him well as he moves on to his next chapter in life for sure. Let's go to the Capitol. It's not Trinity all the time in the Capitol, but they've only not won the division once in recent years. Last year they won the division, lost a tough District 3 title game to Columbia. I was down there sitting courtside. Boy, that was a heartbreaker. Columbia had a good team though. They were kind of blue collar. I don't know if either of you guys watched them last year. They were kind of a tough team, man, and they got them. But Trinity's 0-1 on the season. They're playing right now. They lost to Allentown Central Catholic. They're playing Lancaster Catholic tonight. They lost in the state quarterfinals last year to Executive Education Charter. They got two studs back. I think they got a loaded team. They have senior Owen Schlager, who's a Siena commit, junior Reese Brown, and then they brought a guy over. I don't know if he's necessarily the third best guy. That's not what I'm saying here, but they got a guy from Ghana. It's Eshaw Iddi. So Coach Kostelak kind of has a knack for, I don't know where he finds some of the, well, he obviously found him in Ghana, but he's got some kind of pipeline there and brings in some of these. This guy's big, he's 6'6". And so I would have to think that Trinity's the team to beat over there. Do you know anything about them, either of you, that I didn't mention?
No, I think you nailed it there, Joe. I would imagine Trinity. I'm sure McDevitt's going to make a run at them, but not sure what either team has until we actually get out and see them. You
know, this is for McDevitt and Coach Jason Grace. They're coming off of a 10-11 season. The word is that they have some talent that's kind of matured, ready to play a little better and probably win some more games. The last team was young. Last year's team was young, so we should see some improvement out of them. Susquehanna Township has some returning talent: Alfonso Burnett, Makai Slappy, and Travis Turner. Turner's a big Susquehanna Township name. Lots of good athletes over the years with the last name Turner, and they're another one. I'm going to say the same thing I did about East High. If Susquehanna Township could jump up from the kind of the bottom part of the division to the top, the number 3 or number 4, that would be probably, at least in my eyes, an acceptable improvement. You know, they haven't had a competitive team in a while. Rashawn Macon in his second year at Steel High. They still have Tristan Crawford Jr. You're going to remember these names, John. We covered a couple of their games. Kashmir Mangus and Rashad Holland Ali, all returning. So
they have a couple shooters and a couple returning players that'll help them.
Yeah, and then kind of the teams that I don't know. Big Spring and Boiling Springs are both supposed to be good. You Coach Savercool, you probably know a little bit about them, do you?
Yeah, I mean, Big Spring's going to be an interesting one to watch in that division. So Coach Creek does just a heck of a job down there. Just that little, the run that they went on last year was just really cool to see that community kind of rally. It was kind of like one of those old school, times where you have the entire community shuts down to go watch a basketball game.
Love love it.
He's got it humming down there. It's an interesting jump because the Colonial Capital's very different. Now, Big Spring is a hard team to play against because they play a lot of zone. Coach Creek loves zone, so they kind of have a different flavor that teams are going to have to prepare for. And Coach Creek also has like 45 different sets that he runs, so they're a challenging team to play against because he does a lot of things and gives you different looks every night. So it's going to really challenge that division, and I'm kind of excited to see where they kind of fall in that division. I think they have one of the best players in the division. With that Sally kid, and I think
no doubt
others is now a freshman. So with the other pieces they have, they could make noise in that division.
Right, and then Boiling Springs coming off a really good season. I think they split with Trinity last year. Didn't they win a big game over Trinity and Brett Schaefer, Coach Schaefer?
I think they swept them, Joe.
I think you're right, John. John, that's why I bring you on here, John. Thank you.
I think they have a lot of pieces back. I think Asion, I probably butchered his last name. I think the Yenser kid is still there. Both very good guards. Taller, they have some taller guards, and tough gym to play in when it's full. And I think they're supposed to be pretty good this year. So again, that division is going to be competitive at the top.
I agree. I think so too. Okay, so let's move on to listen. The Colonial Division, guys, in all sports, to me, has improved. I don't like that hierarchy so much. I mean, it's easy to argue that the Commonwealth is better in most sports, and because they have 6A school. But when you put in the Capital in front of the Colonial, every single time, every single conversation, I don't know if it necessarily plays out that way. But for the purpose of just having to put them in some order, let's move on to the Colonial Division. Waynesboro. They're a 6A school. There's two 6A schools that do not compete in the Commonwealth. That's Waynesboro out of the Colonial and Mifflin County out of the Keystone Division.
Cedar Cliff and Mechanicsburg.
I'm sorry. Okay, that's why I have you on. Thanks, guys. You're both. Yeah, I should have. I remembered Cedar Cliff and Mechanicsburg just moved up this year. Cedar Cliff moved up a handful of years ago, right?
Yep, about 6 years ago, yeah.
And Mechanicsburg's going to compete right away, boys and girls. They're not going to take any time to acclimate. So Waynesboro, they're probably right now, I would say, the cream of that division. Do you think so, Ty?
Yeah, I think they have their best players give us some good size. And Tom Hoffman is just a good human being that always gets the most out of their kids. Their challenge every year is when they hit district playoffs, if they get in, they don't have a strength of schedule. I mean, that's where they get hit every year. Is like they're just not. Again, it's that 6A gauntlet. You get in and you're lining up with Reading High and Wilson and Central York and Cumberland Valley. Like you have to be seasoned with your regular season schedule to be ready to go in those environments because it is hard.
Yeah, that's we just saw some of that. Well, I think we're experiencing some of that with Bishop McDevitt football right now. And we said for so many years that they kind of got picked off. Like Dallas last year beat them, and they were so ready this year. And I know it's a different sport, but it's the same kind of situation where you have to play teams to be ready to beat good teams in the postseason for sure. So East Pennsboro, new to the Colonial, they barely missed the last year's postseason. They were one of those. I don't want to say fell victim because the power rankings are what they are, but they lost by a minuscule amount. They missed the postseason, and they're without Dayrell Everett, who's their multi-sport athlete over there. Dayrell Everett has a knee injury, not related to Coach Calvin Everett, by the way. They still have junior Hayden Lay and senior Ali. I think it's Alami. But and Hayden Lay, they have him picked Penn Live to be the top player in the Colonial Division this year. So I think East Pennsboro is going to compete with Waynesboro for sure, even without Everett. And they kind of been inching along over there. You know, it wasn't too long ago that they just were totally uncompetitive in boys basketball, right? Right, Coach?
Yeah, they struggled for a few years, and Coach Rao has brought stability there, and just continually, steadily has built this core group. That it's unfortunate that Dayrell suffered that injury because he's a pretty explosive player that can really get to the rim. And he really changes their dynamic when he's on the floor. So not having him is a definite hit to their offensive ability, but at the end of the day, there's next man up. You got to be ready to go because injuries are part of the game.
Right. And then let's just touch on two more teams here. Greencastle Antrim, because they are the returning division champs. They lost 4 of 5 starters. Todd Stevens coming back from a 20-7. He's the head coach season, and you kind of have to. There's no time to sit around and wonder, what are we going to do? Do you know anything about Coach Stevens and his Greencastle program? I mean, it's tough to lose 4 starters, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's hard because down there, they don't expose themselves to all the level of basketball. I think that would prepare them for playoff basketball. So these teams come in with records that are 15-7, 17-5, whatever it might be, and their question mark is, are they battle tested? So, I think for some of the programs in what I'll call the Mid-Penn South, for them to take that next step, they have to kind of ramp up their non-conference, and then they'll have a better read and be ready to go come February, March.
Right. Okay. And the last one I was going to kind of touch on, we mentioned earlier, Middletown was one of those programs that moved over from the Capital to the Colonial. Coach Chris Bradford, he's just doing well. He's doing well at Middletown. They finished 16-9 last year. Mason Blazer's gone. Mason Blazer was one of probably a top 5 player in the entire conference last year. He's gone. But John, you've been around. This is kind of one of those divisions that you watched pretty intently, closely over the last handful of years. When they lose a big player, and they've had both, I think there's 2 Leach boys, two Leach brothers, and they've had some really good players. It seems like, wow, now they're going, what are they going to do now? But they always come up with that next athlete or two.
Yeah, it seems like they reload with a couple players that keep it competitive,
Right, exactly.
They struggled like certain points of the year, but like last year, like you said, they got it going late and had some big games. And Coach Bradford, he's won a lot of games over there over the last few years, and
66-31. Since in the last 4 seasons, and that's a lot of games.
Yeah, so they're going to be competitive in the Colonial. The one team that we haven't heard much of lately is Shippensburg, Joe.
No, and they're picked. Let's just say picked by the Penn Live guys, who I trust their judgment. They're usually pretty accurate. They're picked to finish 7th. They were 6-15 last year.
Yeah,
they were so loaded with athletes a handful of years ago.
Right.
Would they finish? They finished 2nd in the Mid-Penn. Who'd they lose to? Trinity, maybe? I forget who it was, but I'm just the point I'm making.
Cedar Cliff. Oh,
yeah. There we go.
Oh, Coach Sabercool's very familiar with them.
I'm embarrassed.
We were watching.
I was there. I was sitting in the front row center. Yeah. And very happy, of course, for Coach Saber. Man, I'm embarrassed. All right, I'm rusty, man. Is that okay? Is that an excuse to not remember who they lost to? But the point is, you can't. Athletes don't grow on trees. Okay, you cannot. I mean, that's what I said earlier about Rick Ativo. He's never without athletes down there at Lower Dauphin, but the same thing's probably happened at Shippensburg. You either have the athletes or you don't to compete at a high level. So that's probably what's happened there. How much fun was that winning that game down there at Milton Hershey? Coach Saber.
It was a lot nicer to have a deeper bench that game compared to the prior game because we did have some of the guys back. But Ray not being there anymore, I think they're just kind of in a period of transition with Ray Staver no longer coaching there. So I'm sure it's a great sports community down there. So I'm sure with time they'll rebuild it right back.
Yep.
With where they were, because there was a long stretch where they won a lot of games in a lot of sports.
Certainly
Football,
did.
basketball, everything. Yeah.
A lot of sports, girls sports too.
Yep.
It's generally speaking, it's a strong sports school. There's no doubt about that. All right. Well, I think we got a lot accomplished there, fellas. We had a great interview with Central Dauphin head coach Wayne Fletcher. I think we broke down these division mid-pen conference divisions as well as we could out of the gate. I mean, we're going to know more when more happens, and then we'll talk about it then. That's why we call this the recap show. So basically, next week it's going to be Monday because we have one more Sunday night football show. So we're going to move from Tuesday to Monday. And then after that, we'll settle into Sunday night at 6 o'clock. And I think that most of the high school fans, sports fans, they're kind of used to that day and time. And I think we're going to have a really good following. That was a great show, guys. I really appreciate you joining us. Kind of dragged it out a little bit there. We were at an hour and 10 minutes. We usually don't go that long. But again, we're just going to probably focus on a couple of the bigger games from the week and then, kind of dabble into some of this stuff rather than go hard on all the teams like that. So any closing thoughts, guys?
Yeah, basketball season's here.
Yeah, we're ready.
It's the best time of the year.
That's John likes the basketball season. I'm more of I love girls basketball. I've started to really like softball a lot. I'm spoiled. I cover softball, and there's like some really good teams in the area. But basketball is a great time of the year. So let's thank once again our opening guest, Coach Wayne Fletcher, and our Linglestown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors. Again, they are Rickabaz Electric, Payer Apparel, American Legion Post 272, Sam Hartley Decking, Modern Imprint. Got the Modern Imprint coffee mug here. Thank you to Mike from Modern Imprint. Hoffman Ford, Ted's Bar and Grill, the Tire Mart, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, Capital Region Insurance Agency. You know those folks, Ty. Tonino's Pizza, Team PA, AAU Basketball, Underdog Sports Bar and Grill, and Crystal Bob at Howard Hanna Real Estate. Thanks to those great local businesses for their continued support of Linglestown Gazette Sports and our area student athletes. Thanks to Coach Ty Savercool, John Velios, thank you very much. And start thinking about who we want to have on next week as our opening guest, because this is all of our show. Believe me, you'll start to realize that the only thing I'm really doing is somebody's got to have an outline and keep us kind of on it. But other than that, it's everybody's show, and you guys did a great job. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.